One of my favorite moments of medical school was when I first learned about something called Takotsubo syndrome. In more technical terms, this is known as stress cardiomyopathy, but its most famous name is actually broken heart syndrome. In this condition, severe enough emotional stressors can cause the left side of our hearts to dilate transiently and weaken, which prevents it from being able to pump blood to the rest of the body effectively. It can feel just like a heart attack, except it's way less likely to kill you and not really caused by any real underlying disease or pathology. So, all the poets and the forlorn lovers singing about the heart-wrenching anguish of heartbreak were not far off in their exaggerations. That night, after class, I remember sitting at home in my room and listening to my heart for the first time with a stethoscope, hearing the steady lub-dub of its valves closing in synchrony, and realizing that this little muscly organ in our chest that's only as small as a loosely closed fist does so much more than just keep us alive. It helps us feel pain, joy, and one of the most wonderful things in the world, love. But in my many, many years of education, I was never really taught to understand its inner workings, how to express what it wants to say, and most importantly, how to protect it from the wear and tear that life inevitably puts it through. For everything else in my life, I had a textbook, a procedure, a reliable script for success that was almost always guaranteed to work. But love challenges everything we know to be real. It's a torrential rainstorm that not even the best of us can ever really prepare for, and somehow the only way through is blind faith and reckless abandon. So, in our time together today, I hope to share some of the things that I've learned along the way about love, in all its messy, incongruent glory, and the kind of person I've become on the path to finding it. And I know some of you are thinking, I'm just a medical student, not an expert or a dating coach. But whether you're single and in your 20s like me, or celebrating your 40th year of marriage, at some point, we've all found ourselves equally underqualified and underprepared for navigating all the twists and turns of romantic love. Today, I hope to offer you a gentle prescription of 3 lessons that help me take care of my heart, with the hope that it gives you a pocket full of peace as you take that first plunge in your own lives. The first lesson is to nurture your delusions, because somehow, somewhere, they're rooted in the truth. I know, it sounds crazy, but please hear me out. When we talk about dating today, everyone tries to get us to use this evidence-based approach to finding love. We're constantly told that modern love is all about optimizing compatibility, being realistic, and not letting your emotions get in the way of making a practical decision, like who to keep for now and who's forever. But that, I believe, is such a terrible derision of love, because we all know that it is the most impractical thing on earth. It's the warm, gooey squishiness that makes us do irrational things we thought we'd never, ever do, but also brings a magic and light to everyday life where we least expect it. My faith in what many people would call a romanticized view of love actually comes from my upbringing. My childhood was filled with old-school Bollywood romance films, with beautiful stories about heroes and heroines fighting impossible odds just to be together. There were scenic landscapes and gorgeous women screaming their feelings on top of mountains, all while a gorgeous soundtrack played in the background. So, it really shouldn't come as a surprise that my ideas of romance are decorated in poetry, music, and idealism. But really, more than the movies, I think it's my parents' fault. As cliche as it sounds, they're my inspiration for romance, even though the story of how they met is not a traditional one, at least in the Western sense. Like most young people in northern India in the 90s, my parents met through the arranged marriage circuit. Their families spent one afternoon talking over tea and biscuits while photographs were passed around. And after just a single conversation, 2 adorable but very awkward adults decided to spend the rest of their lives together. In their now 25 years of marriage, I've seen how love ages, and evolves through a lifetime of challenges, and how its expression softens into subtler moments of kindness. My mom often tells me about their first few months together and how they built a friendship up from scratch, learning all these little tiny things about each other bit by bit. Like that time she bought him a mustard yellow sweater, an outrageous color that somehow became his favorite overnight. Or how my dad used to take her to the best libraries in the city at least once every weeknight because he knew how much she loved to read and wanted to inspire her to continue higher education. And I know I may sound a little disillusioned and hopeless, but it's this exact faith that allows me to see romance and love bloom in their relationship after all these years. Like at a wedding, for example, when their favorite song comes on and my quiet, shy dad finally finds the courage to get up and sing and twirl my mom around in circles as she laughs and tries to follow along his absurd dance moves. As I watch them from the corner of the room, I see the years fall like confetti around them, and suddenly they're both as young and hopeful as the day they got married. I wish I could just stop at this being delusional part because it's magical and easy, but this first lesson is unfortunately only the groundwork for the real test, the true clinical trial, the part where you actually put yourself out there for other people to see. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to formally welcome you to the world of modern dating, a funny little place that lies somewhere between fiction and reality and is filled with mystical things like red flags and green flags that you must learn to decipher all by yourself without a code book, and where horrors like ghosting, catfishing, and commitment phobia happily coexist. That brings me to my second lesson. Love should always be all about you, except most times we forget. Let me explain what I mean. I'd like you to take a moment to look at this obviously dashing candidate's dating profile up here. I really hope you're getting funny, a little nerdy, has friends of course, and is most definitely not boring vibes because I was so desperately trying to convey that. I really don't know enough about dating profiles to give myself a grade up here, but what I do know is that this was the most uncomfortable all about me poster I've put together in my entire life. And anyone here who's been in my shoes knows that through the process, they've probably asked themselves the most ridiculous questions like, what line makes me sound smart but also coy and mysterious? And which angle gives me the jawline of a Ralph Lauren model? Or which picture captures my eccentric personality but isn't strange enough to push them away? Safe to say, this photo of me in Kirkland slides did not make the cut. In the dating world, we try our absolute best to be this paragon of social desirability, flashing our teeth and our accomplishments, all in the hopes that some stranger will pick us amongst a sea of other people. And we want them to rank us as high as possible on this arbitrary scale of fling to ring. Suddenly, everything you do, everything you rearrange and reposition about yourself becomes about the other person and not you. So why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through all of it? Because liking someone new for the first time always feels like a 1,000-watt rush. Getting to know them is like being pulled into an entire new universe, and the door to your own world slowly starts to close shut behind you. In this shiny new place, it's so easy to forget about yourself. You and everyone else who comes to this place is fixated on turning a picture of a stranger into someone you know, trying to do what time does so gracefully over the years in a matter of just weeks. And eventually, when you find yourself knee-deep in a pile of somebody else's half-truths, you realize you've forgotten why you came here in the first place. And worst of all, you're further from yourself than you've ever been before. This flashy arcade game that we call dating gives you the illusion that you can somehow control another person's feelings, that if you sway the odds in your favor by presenting a more palatable version of yourself, you'll win. But you can't make someone love you. So, when and wherever you decide to put yourself out there, I really ask you to hang tight to your honesty and authenticity. Because it's the only thing that's strong enough to cut through all the plastic reality and pretentious glares of perfection that litter the world of modern love. Because the heart deserves a love that is true and honest. Authenticity doesn't promise you a painless path. But whenever that Band-Aid does come off, it will always be ripped off your own skin and not an imposter's, and there will always, always, always be valor in that. But what happens when you start liking someone a little bit more than just a little bit? When the sight of their smiling face makes you giddy with joy and simultaneously gives you a hypertensive crisis. Something happens to us when we fall in love. Whether it's the chemicals in your brain or the butterflies in your stomach, that something has the power to make us do some ridiculous things. And we still do it all, knowing that we run the risk of encountering one of the ugliest emotions in the world. Rejection. And that brings me to my final lesson. Love can and will be embarrassing. And you need to be prepared to make a complete fool of yourself. I know in this room there are probably stories of sappy confessions, 2 a.m. text messages that haunt us in the morning, and other terrible, terrible things that we'd prefer to bury deep, deep underground. I have my own closet of horrors too, like the time I confessed my feelings to my high school crush. Now, I was a teenager, and like all crushes when we were at that age, it was an all-consuming one. My entire day's trajectory would depend on whether one boy with glasses and a knack for math, it was my nerd face, would come to school. Even as we grew into adults and nothing really happened in high school, I never forgot about him. And it was this persistent memory of lost love that led me to confess my feelings 4 years later in a horrendous, humiliating love letter that I handed to him with partly burned cookies that I baked myself. And on that smoldering July afternoon, I was rejected. At first, I really thought it was the cookies, but he clarified and told me it was definitely me that he was rejecting. Kindly, I'll give him that, but I'll never forget that walk home with my heart in my throat. I was trying to hide my tears from strangers on public transit, and the time that I spent cursing myself for trying to do something so incredibly stupid. Nothing ever makes us feel more silly, more vulnerable, and exposed than we choose to express our feelings to someone we care about. You're willing to risk everything, your pride, your self-respect, everything you've spent your entire life guarding, for the sliver of hope that someone might do the same for you. It's an act of bravery and courage that I really don't think we celebrate enough, because it's never really about this guy or the next guy. Making a fool of yourself for love is ultimately about you, how much you're willing to give, and the distances that you'll go to keep your heart wide open when the entire world tries to tell you to solder it shut. No matter how terrible it was that day, I will never regret writing and sending that letter. It doesn't matter how many writing entries that I had to put in my diary to erase the memory, but I won't regret it because I did it in my own silly, overdramatic, crazy way. So, take it from somebody who practices winking in front of her bathroom mirror and pickup lines with her plushies, embarrassment, rejection, and looking like a complete idiot is all a part of love. In a world that's obsessed with perfection, it's the one small thing that helps us remember that we're all human. Over the last few minutes, I've told you a couple of things. That you should be delusional. You should be painstakingly honest about who you are, and also accept the fact that you'll probably look like a total fool while doing all of this. And if you've been paying attention, you'll realize that none of these lessons have been about the person that you're trying to love or find. They've been about you, about us, how we see love, how we choose to present to the world, and how we choose to repair our feelings when they've been hurt. As ironic as it seems, this journey to finding your romantic partner and building a relationship with someone new, it actually brings you closer to yourself. I don't think anything in the world fosters the kind of intimacy and honesty and trust that you build with yourself on this crazy path to finding love. Every bathroom mirror pep talk, every time you held your own hand as you tried to get up after the millionth fall, every tear you wiped off your own face was a renewal of that bond that you share with your own heart. So, as I complete this prescription, I want you to know that these lessons don't come with a guarantee that you'll find the love of your dreams, or it doesn't even guarantee you a smooth ride to getting there. But that's the crazy thing. That's the beauty of orchestrating this clinical trial of the heart. You can't ever prepare for the hurricane that it's going to put you through, nor can you ever really reliably predict the results. Because love is that one variable that'll throw your carefully designed experiment completely off course. But it will always give you magic, laughter, and humility in return. And that is the best medicine out there. Thank you.